don't know if people could see it in the picture there, but Felix Sater basically got flattened in court. Brutal. Total loss. I have to say, I was a bit surprised. I should have hung around there. The verdict came down around 4 o'clock. I just figured, I don't know, it seemed like a slam dunk to me that they had that Rule 50 motion at the end, which I put it up on Twitter. There were 3 motions this morning that the judge denied as moot. One of them was Felix Sater and his brilliant team of stupid lawyers wanted to bring in another witness. What's his name? Diller? Not Diller. People can look at it on Twitter. Follow me on X, sorry, at JG_CSTT. They wanted to bring in unknown witnesses. Dan Ritter, I think was the guy's name. But unknown witnesses, how do you have unknown witnesses? None of this stuff is supposed to be a surprise. You have to say, hey, we're gonna bring this person as a witness. This is like discovery stuff. Bring this person as a witness, and then the defendant, somebody say, well, wait a minute, I object, or I mean the plaintiffs. You have a bit of back and forth, and then that's what all the motion practice, as I understand it, is supposed to be about. Get the case all ready to go before you get the judge involved, and so as not to waste a lot of time during the trial. But remember, I'm not a lawyer, so nothing I'm saying is legal advice, and it could be completely wrong. I'm just a guy looking at evidence in the public domain and kind of forming my own opinions. You might see that same evidence, come to a different opinion. Now, this thing here, I'm not sure what that is. I guess it's an apartment building. Is it just covered in some sort of white stuff, or are there windows under there? It looks like there might be. I mean, it's kind of a weird building, isn't it? But anyway, I could be wrong. I don't think I am, or I wouldn't tell you this stuff. But that's the drill. And you know, some dunce on X was like, oh, this cuck, he's got to have a disclaimer on everything. Well, the point of that disclaimer is to make it abundantly clear so that somebody who wants to bring a frivolous lawsuit and claim that I'm defaming them or something like that, walking the dog off leash and looking at me like I'm doing something, going on the subway with a dog off leash. What a dick this guy is. This is what New York is about. Anyway, it's to make it abundantly clear that these are pure opinions. My statements are my opinions formed from viewing evidence in the public domain. What happened yesterday is Felix Sater lost a civil case. The city of Almaty, Kazakhstan prevailed in their civil claims, which included conversion, unjust enrichment, and money had or received. So these are, you know, financial crimes. People also know that Felix Sater has previously been convicted for assault in the first degree. He stabbed a dude in the face with a broken glass in a bar, and first degree assault is a felony. So he went to Rikers Island for that. Testified about this a bit during the trial. It made no sense, except that, you know, for the little bit that I know about Felix Sater, we'll get into some of the details about Julie and how upset she is that I'm not the degree of Felix Sater expert that she is, and I should have no say. People shouldn't listen to me. She should contact Twitter 18 times to get my account canceled. And, you know, she's going to spend days and weeks going all up and down Twitter complaining about me. Why does she care? Why not just go write her blog, say what she wants to say about Felix Sater, and then people will be like, well, Jason, you're talking about her too. Right, because her behavior is so incongruent with what you would expect from a normal person, it causes me to question her motivation, and then that becomes a whole separate, you know, area of interest. Why is this person, who is a mother and a wife and a beer store worker, where her primary focus should be on her family and her job. Why is she so focused on Felix Sater and now subsequently me? It does not make sense unless, as I said, if somebody hired her, you could understand that. A mom who has a day job and a from-home business developing websites, or there's any number of things that people could do to get into to help their family make ends meet. It's respectable work. I'm not saying anything other than most people generally don't spend thousands of hours on a subject when they have so many other obligations and responsibilities, and then just say, and I'm just gonna put this information out into the world because Felix Sater is a nice guy who got shafted by the system. By the way, he's not a nice guy. We've seen over the past 2 weeks, he's got basically zero impulse control. Even when he knows he's on camera, he assaulted me. I knew this already going into the cops when I made a police report, but they basically didn't want to do anything because the phone wasn't damaged. They asked me, they saw that I had an iPhone. They're aware that iPhones can be $1,000 or more. So if you assault someone and damage their $1,200 iPhone, I think that's larceny, and then the cops will do something. And I've previously said that I have a smashed up iPhone that I keep in the apartment because the camera part of it is still fine. I could have easily brought that into the police station and lied and made a report and say, oh, he hit me, here's the video of him hitting me, and here's the smashed phone. And they said they would have arrested him. But I didn't even bring that smashed phone to the police station because, see, the way my brain works is I start with, look, that's dishonest and you shouldn't do it. And then the devil on my shoulder says, yeah, but wouldn't it be awesome if that dude's trial got delayed because he got arrested for assaulting me? And then the judge, who's also on my case, would find out and he'd be so shocked and he'd say, wow, what is going on, Mr. Goodman, that these people wanted to assault you? And I'd say, let me explain it to you, Judge Colt. Although Mr. Zach called him Judge Codal. And when I asked at the court previously, they told me it was pronounced Colt. He's got a very unusual spelling of it. But the point is, there was a part of my brain, how should I put this? Wanting something, having a desire, that's one thing. Acting on your desires, that's completely another. You know, if a cat wants to just attack a bird, because it looks like, hey, I could kill that, or bring it inside. I bet you my owner would love that. We could put that in the living room. And they bring it in and just, you know, bleed up all over your house and freak out and get the thing out. But you know what I'm saying? Cats don't have morality. They just see a bird and there's an instinct to kill it. People don't do that, you know? When you see something smaller and weaker than you, unless you're a psychopath, you don't just attack it. When you see something that you want, a Cartier watch or whatever, sure, you want it, but you know it's immoral and illegal to steal it, so you don't just go in there and do it. Having an impulse, having a desire, that's just natural, uncontrollable. You know, like there's ice cream. Ice cream is delicious, but I'm not gonna go eat every single, you know, gallon of ice cream in that little stand. First of all, it would make me sick. Second of all, they own it and I don't want to pay for it. You know what I'm saying? Acting on every desire is just not something that you can do. So Felix Sater is essentially a psychopath. He just does whatever he wants. And I think that that psychopathy might be something, I'm not a medical doctor, so this is also not a diagnosis. This is just my opinion, my unmedical opinion, non-professional. You know, I've read that psychopathy is defined by having an utter lack of empathy for your fellow humans. So, like, if you don't care that stealing ice cream from that stand could get those guys fired, could get you arrested, or stealing millions of dollars from people, you just say, oh, there's no victim, because I'm not beating somebody over the head and taking their watch off of their wrist, there's no victim. But when you steal millions and facilitate the theft of billions, there are victims. And so you have to not care about the people of Kazakhstan, the people of the United States, all this money laundering that he's doing. The reason why money laundering is such a serious crime is that it it does a lot of things. It evades taxes. He's robbing from each of us. Now look at this, the building is retracted, right? Look, it's on these casters. This is an admittedly, when have you ever seen another building that can roll? That has got to be an incredibly complicated logistical, see these rubber tracks? Wow, that's really, I guess that, it rides on that. So that's amazing. So they're gonna do a concert here or something. But everyone agrees, there's just not that many buildings on wheels. Oh wow, look at that. You can see all the way back. Have you ever seen another building on casters? No. Me neither. It's wild. That is a huge caster, Tiny Elvis. Anyway, so Felix Sater, he just does whatever the hell he wants because you see, that's in him. And if he just went to jail and got out of jail and had to have a crappy job for the rest of his life, every time he wanted to stab somebody in the face or smack the phone out of their hand, he'd be like, oh man, remember that time I had to spend 1.5 years in Rikers Island and almost got killed every day? Let me control this impulse and not do what I know is the wrong thing to do, even though I want to. He hasn't had that experience. Since he was in his late 20s, his experience has been, you have a special hall pass to do whatever the hell you want, and you're not going to get into trouble. Now look, here's the thing. Let's just talk for a minute about Julie and what it is that she appears to be wanting to do. So, it's very, very clear to me, and she's welcome to sue me for defamation if that's what she thinks this is, but it's very clear to me that someone is somehow motivating Julie to be essentially a PR operation for Felix Sater. And there's a load of evidence in the public domain that causes me to arrive at that conclusion. One of the elements that they were discussing in the case was that Felix Sater was accused of engaging in what they call the propaganda campaign, where there's emails going between him and Mendel Moshkin talking about getting some particular Italian journalist involved and, you know, putting an article in this magazine or newspaper or whatever it is. Well, how is that different other than perhaps the distribution, the number of people who read it? He's just putting out media releases. So whether that's happening on Twitter or an Italian magazine or the Washington Post, all of this stuff is coordinated. Remember when I got sued, it was very important to the Television Academy. I mean, what was the cost of putting that big, it was essentially a press release in the Hollywood Reporter. And by the way, I knew, as Dr. Robert Malone would say, I knew in the first person, is what he said. I had firsthand personal knowledge that the Hollywood Reporter can be bought, because when Julia X was in the Marché du Film in Cannes in, I believe, 2011. I wanted it to be in 2010, and that would have changed my career and potentially, anyway, the point of the matter is, it was super favorably reviewed in the Hollywood Reporter. And it's not to say that I think the film is bad. It's actually a lot better than you would think. And in particular, the 3D I find excellent. And in fact, 15 years on now, most of the reviews, which now the bulk of the reviews are from individuals who just bought it on Blu-ray and are reviewing it on Amazon or whatever, people generally say this is actually not as bad as I thought it would be, and the 3D is great, is the general review. But the Hollywood Reporter was effusive in their praise of this thing, and I happen to know that the producer took out a $10,000 ad. So what I'm just saying is and after the Emmys put in that article about how they sued me, which was essentially just their complaint placed into the Hollywood Reporter, including the image that they were suing me to take off of the internet, which I'm not allowed. If I published it on the internet, it's contempt of court, and I'd have to deal with Valerie Caproni again. But it's out there. You can, crowdsource Hollywood Reporter Emmys. You can see the image. They have all kinds of language in the final order and judgment about the different ways in which I have to destroy the thing and I'm not allowed to reproduce it, but yet there it is. And a lot more people look at the Hollywood Reporter than do crowdsource the truth. That's one of the reasons why it's important for people to become sponsors. But the point is, these media campaigns are extremely important. Felix wants it so that when you search Google or Twitter or whatever, you see all this information that corresponds with his version of the story. And so I think I have a much clearer picture of what was going on now, having gone to the trial and listened to all these details and hear testimony and have an opportunity to evaluate some of these people. That's not to say that I think I know everything about what happened. Obviously, there's vast swaths of this complicated, decades-long story that I haven't even examined, that I'm not even aware of. I'm just talking about a very few particular details that I've become more familiar with that I think are important to a lot of different things. Now, so let's just look at this Julie person for a moment from the standpoint of the ongoing interest in understanding social engineering. I am convinced that she is a social engineer. So one of the things that she was talking about on Twitter was this dude, what's his name? Something Rakashev. Okay, so she's very interested in Hunter Biden, and there was some kind of story that Sater was trying to tell me about how these guys are doing something with Hunter Biden, and he's constantly trying to position himself as being Trump's ally. So right, okay, so this transcript, this Washington Post article is talking about Hunter Biden's closed-door interview, remember, with Congress. And so then here is the transcript, and what they're talking about is, right, there was some article that Julie had, or some tweet, or her own blog or whatever, talking about how this dude, you remember Hunter Biden had this Porsche. He got wired $142,300 from a Kazakhstani oligarch who is Kenis Rakashev. Right, so they're saying that this guy now controls this ABT bank, BTA bank, and that Joe Biden met him at that Cafe Milano dinner. So, I mean, okay, fine, that is interesting, and it obviously connects to this story, but how does that, absolve Felix Sater from doing it? That's just a separate thing. So that's pretty interesting that Kenis Rakashev is buying Hunter Biden Porsches. And why would he do that? Well, separately, this is something from the House Judiciary or whoever is investigating Hunter Biden, that Joe Biden met all of these people who are sending money to his family. And I mean, again, what Joe Biden did in 2016 or 17 or whatever, he's having these dinners at Cafe Milano, I don't understand how that pertains to what Felix Sater was doing from 1996 to 2008 or 9 or whenever this happened. The other thing that's interesting is it came out in court. Maybe this is all already known, but again, I'm not interested in studying Julie's blog to understand what's going on. And I'm also, so she put out on Twitter, a lot of stupid stuff. She was basically saying like, oh, good morning to everybody who's sick of only one person covering the Felix Sater trial or whatever she's saying here. Why does she care? Why not just ignore it? And she's like, oh, he doesn't even know about the background and he just found RJI Capital. No, I've been hearing about RJI Capital for weeks. What I found was its entry on Open Corporates in relation to Peter Garsky and all the names that are associated with it. Even if this other account has already found that and discussed that, again, I'm not about, plumbing the depths of her research and presuming that it's all correct. So this is now entered in court. My evaluation of it concerns who entered it. See, it's a more meaningful piece of information when it's entered in court than when it's plopped onto Twitter by somebody who's like not even using their real name. So now we know this is entered in court. Other courts are going to look at it and it becomes a different kind of information. I'm not saying court is better. I'm just saying we know who put it in there. That alone is better than just some random person on Twitter. But the point is, I still don't even care. I am interested in why all these people started doing things to try to manipulate my life. And Julie seems to think I'm competing with her to become this encyclopedia of Felix Sater. I'm not. And so there's going to be things that she knows about him, even if they're true and correct information, that are just totally irrelevant to anything that I care about. And she's the one who got into competition with me. I contacted her in good faith, not to be like, hey, come on my show and let's make money together or anything like that. I was just like, hey, Felix Sater has sort of come into my, sphere of being here, and you have a blog all about him. Can we have a chat? I think a non-psychotic person would have said, sure, what do you know, or what do you want to know, or just DM or whatever. She was just a bitch from the jump and has been nothing but that. The other thing is, remember, she's encouraging people not to sponsor the show. So let's just take a moment to remind everybody that on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, first of all, you can subscribe for free, and it's an excellent alternative. See, these people are smoking cigarettes in the park. That's incredibly rude. But for $3 a month, you can become a member, and that helps support the show. So please go to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. They're July 11th planning to launch the most advanced update of their system since it began. And they've been hinting that it's going to be a decentralized, censorship-resistant platform. So that's going to be really interesting to see. Subscribe for free or become a member for as little as $3 a month and access sponsor-exclusive content on Odyssey. You can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Now, I'm not telling people not to go to the beer store so that the beer store goes out of business and Julie gets fired and has no job. Go drink all the beer you want. If you're near wherever the hell she is, have all the beer you can buy. And then the store will be busy and her job will be safe.
That sounds a lot better.
I don't need people to not listen to her. I'm frankly surprised that she doesn't want to put her blog on Substack or Twitter or somewhere where it could be monetized. I would think people who spend thousands of hours doing something would like to be compensated for that time, because you see, people need money to buy food, and if she's got a kid, he needs food, and there's only a limited number of hours in the day. So I'm just constantly confused that she has so much time to spend on Felix Sater when she's obviously not financially secure to the extent that she wouldn't need a job or something like that. So I believe she's paid by someone or other. Maybe she's not actually paid. Maybe she lives in a condo that she doesn't have to pay rent on. Ooh, didn't she tell us she was in Ohio? Felix Sater had a whole real estate project going on in Ohio. And all of his kickback deals that they were talking about in court was that they actually wanted apartment units and things in some of these real estate projects. I mean, to the extent that it made me feel like there was a team involved with stealing the money that had some crossover with the team that was involved in locating the money. And that's why the team involved in locating the money had so much detailed information about how to find it and who knew where it went. This is what I think. This is not the stuff that was necessarily proven in court. There was a lot of testimony around these transactions and allegations that caused me to come to the opinion that I'm now sharing with everyone. I'm speaking like this because obviously there are lawyers involved, there are companies involved, there are people who have been involved in dozens of lawsuits involved, and I would prefer to not get into lawsuits. But if I do, I want to make sure when I'm in there I can defend the things that I'm saying. So again, it hasn't been proven in court that in the mid to late 90s, somebody probably like the FBI or the CIA said, hey, that was really cool how we caused the Soviet Union to collapse. Instead of allowing Putin's plan to create a modernized Russia with a European-style economy that wants to join the G20 and wants to join NATO and wants to denationalize businesses and give out stock certificates to the citizens and create a stock market in Kazakhstan that's in Almaty and try to create a thriving economy so that the former Soviet republics can stand as independent sovereign nations with thriving, successful economies and trade with Europe and have prosperous life for the people who live there. These are actually pretty noble goals, but it seems like the CIA or somebody like that said, nah, we don't want that. We want to destroy the Soviet Union economically, militarily, information warfare. We don't want another superpower to rise and challenge the United States of America. This was the entire Project for a New American Century manifesto, the neocon Bible, basically, for the new century. This was the document written by Paul Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld and, what's his name, Kagan. I think that's Victoria Nuland's husband, right? Doug Kagan, is that it? I mean, these guys basically with their stupid Brookings Institution-like thing, a non-profit, non-government organization, the Project for a New American Century, they wrote essentially a manifesto. And they said, in their own words, they don't want, now that the Soviet Union has fallen, it's a climate for the United States to thrive as the single economic and military superpower in the world, and it spoke about how they do not want another military or economic superpower to rise. And they're talking about China and Russia. So somebody who wrote that document would say, well, they could say, well, you know, we don't really want Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and Georgia and Lithuania and Ukraine. We don't want all of these former Soviet republics, some of which are more modernized than others or have at least municipalities that are like Almaty, and there's another big city in Kazakhstan, I forget the name of it, but that's become the capital. And you know, they want to be trading in uranium. There is a uranium one component, I'm sure, here. See, Felix Sater, he's friends with Bill Clinton. He told me in court that the thing that was in the envelope, I probably said this in the video yesterday, the thing in the envelope was a get-out-of-jail-free card. It was Osama bin Laden's cell phone numbers. So that was 1998. That was for Bill Clinton. What he hasn't spoken about recently in great detail was this presidential directive by which he was tracking these at-risk missiles that had originally been disseminated to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan with Operation Cyclone. I had asked him about that in the park, and he spoke about it a little bit. But 1998, he's got a lot of stuff going on with Bill Clinton. It seems like he was really at the height of his powers under Bill Clinton. So I like to think about this in terms of a Sopranos episode, because many, many times in this trial, they spoke about crime families. Sater himself speaks about the Krapanov crime family, the Ablaziov crime family. So we know from a fictionalized standpoint in The Sopranos how these things work. And maybe some of that comes from real life. We know that Caproni and her team were very involved in bringing down the mafia, or according to them, bringing down the mafia. I think they just took it over, integrated themselves with it. See, and when he spoke about that, the compensation, the wacky compensation plans of like, give us a couple of apartment units and this and that, that made me think about all the real estate that Andrew Weissman and Valerie Caproni own. It's true that lawyers earn a lot of money, and they could have just bought that stuff, but it's, we learned a lot about money laundering. And again, I might not know everything that Julie knows about Felix Sater, but I don't care. I'm not interested in Felix Sater in particular. Obviously, I'm interested in him. I'm talking about him. I'm going to his trial. But he is not the central focus. There are things that I am learning from his trial about other things that are my central focus. So let's talk about what was learned about money laundering. We learned the part about how he gets all the cash from the 47th Street Diamond District, and he's doing the wires to Europe for them to buy the big uncut diamonds. That makes sense. But you know, he's got all this money that he's making. He's got money in a bank to send wire transfers. So, I mean, again, how is it laundered? I mean, they spoke about the need to just have a lot of different companies and a lot of different bank accounts and moving it from one to another, just so that it becomes confusing to trace the transactions. Well, certainly that's the same thing that Hunter Biden has been accused of doing, but I mean, that's like saying Francis Ford Coppola made a movie and, you know, I'm doing the same thing, so we must be in business together. You can't really make that conclusion, although, you know, there are certain cases where you could. To get a little bit more specific, if you notice that somebody, I think I've made this analogy before, people who came up doing 3D with me and were trained by me have an approach that would tell certain experts that, oh, this guy shoots 3D like Jason, and there's basically half of the people like that way and the other half like a different way. So, I mean, you know, depending on exactly what the techniques are, I don't know, we can start to, so they both know this guy, Kenneth Rakashev. So why did he send him $142,000? Maybe that's just to introduce him to Joe. And so they need to send the money, right? So they've got all this money building up from money laundering. And some of the things that they want to do is, like, you know, buy malls in Ohio. So they want to put it into real property. They're stealing it from Kazakhstan, moving it through all these international shell companies, dealing with this guy, Peter Garsky. So, I mean, again, what I found about RJI Capital was that Peter Garsky controls it. And so that owns Arcanum or something like that. It's a very convoluted, you know, when you go to Arcanum Asia, it's not like they have a picture there that says, oh, our beloved founder died in his 50s. I've seen companies that do that. There is not a whiff of anything on the internet connecting Peter Garsky to Arcanum Hong Kong. And if I hadn't heard about it in this trial, it would have been very difficult. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Julie has all this information at her fingertips. But the point is, I want to know what Peter Garsky died of. I want to know, where is he buried? Did he have, he did have family, actually. I read in his obituary. So there's more research that could be done into Peter Garsky, but it's all just very curious. He was an attorney with Patton Boggs. We found that out, but there was another one also, Hostetler. What's it called again? Baker Hostetler. He was with Baker Hostetler. So that's a firm that was started by Jim Baker, not the guy from Twitter, the guy who was Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State. So, I mean, come on now, that's not a deep state law firm. There's a lot going on here. And so, again, what I think is happening is Felix Sater, I believe, was involved in a plan to create a subprime loan crisis in Kazakhstan, concurrent with the subprime crisis here in the United States. It's almost like, you know, this worldwide effort to just utterly collapse the banking system. And so think about that. 2008. We've been hearing a bit about the petrodollar lately. And it causes me to wonder, if it was 1968 or 69, and you were in, you know, Washington, D.C. doing whatever, and Nixon starts to realize, hey, I really enjoy bombing little kids and old ladies in Vietnam and Laos and all that, but we're running out of bombs and we're running out of money. We need more bombs. And he wants to just start printing dollars and go off of the gold standard. And Henry Kissinger says, hey, Dick, you can't do that, because then there's just going to be all these dollars around and they're going to become worthless. We need to tie it to a commodity. So they came up with the petrodollar. But what I'm thinking is, if you knew that they were going to take the dollar off of the gold standard, like, whoever thinks something is a great idea somebody else thinks it's a terrible idea. So they're going to say, hey, we're going off the gold standard. Someone's going to say, oh my God, you can't do that. The economy is going to crash and it's going to be terrible and blah, blah, blah. So if you knew that that was going to happen and you knew you couldn't stop it, if you're a financial expert of some kind, is there stuff that you would do that could preserve your wealth if you knew that the dollar was going to collapse? And as outsiders, if we looked at that stuff, would it seem like a ridiculous investment in a normal climate, but perhaps make sense if it was made at a time that the person knew that things were going to collapse? For instance, 2008. I was discussing this with Charles. He told me that Jared Kushner bought 666 Fifth Avenue at the absolute top of the market for a ridiculous price, and then the crash happened right away, and the value of the building was just like completely sucked out, and that Kushner had no collateral and got this ridiculous loan that Charles says he shouldn't have gotten. And see, I find that interesting. And listen, maybe Julie is a normal person and she's just an obsessive, psychotic maniac. That's possible. Maybe I've interpreted this incorrectly. I don't think so, though, because I see evidence in what she's saying that causes me to believe otherwise. But I'm saying this because, Charles analyzes things from the standpoint of, he wants to get into the nitty-gritty details of what was the value of the building and what type of mortgage was it, and because that's how he analyzes things. And I absolutely guarantee that things could be learned by knowing those kinds of details of the transactions, but I'm just sort of like not even up to that granular level yet. Back on this Jared Kushner building, so if it's 2008, and let's say you somehow know that they're planning a subprime mortgage crisis, and the plan is to just crush every single bank, and then the government is going to bail it all out and basically create insane inflation off the backs of every one of us who just work for an hour and earn whatever and put that in the bank and spend that on food and stuff that we get, and maybe don't have that much in the way of investments and don't own huge buildings and sort of just live our lives by earning money and spending it. I'm not saying that's smart. I'm just acknowledging that that's what a lot of people, kind of including me, just do. And we don't know. This stuff happens to the economy, and eggs go up to $8 and we're like, WTF. People probably saw that video where some guy went back in his Walmart history and he's like, hey, this is what I order every month for my groceries, and I went back to whatever date 4 years ago and it was $140 or something like that, or $114, and then he just said reorder it right now and it was 400 and something bucks. But because it's done boiling frog style, you're just kind of like, hey, this stuff is getting more expensive. And meanwhile, even if Kushner, let's say he paid 5 times as much for that building as it's worth, if the dollar is worth 1/20th of what it was before that all started, he still has the building. So he's kind of preserved some wealth, right? I don't know where this crackling is coming from. I'm gonna keep changing different pieces. So it seems to me that Felix Sater was involved in a plan, and I'm not saying it was his plan. He was a cog in the machine, but he was involved in some kind of plan, it seems, to crash the bank in Kazakhstan, and they pretty much succeeded. They told me that the bank had to be nationalized, so the government had to take it over. And that was only kind of a short while after they had unnationalized everything to try to make it fair market economies. So we see that picture of Felix Sater smiling like a dick with Bill Clinton. We know he got those bin Laden's satellite phone number in 1998. That was for Bill Clinton. and the missiles, that was also for Bill Clinton. So he's good buddies with Bill Clinton. Why would Donald Trump want to hang out with him? And same thing with Michael Cohen. We've seen pictures of him with Hillary Clinton. They just really, really seem like double-cross agents. And they're super adamant about no, I didn't set up Donald Trump. And Julie was very focused on her little script, like she's reading for the high school play when she came onto that Twitter Spaces. Remember, she was like, if Felix wanted to set up Donald Trump, who could have done it better than him? And he didn't. So Felix didn't set up Donald Trump. I'm not saying that he's going to go and testify and say, oh yeah, Donald Trump did X, Y, and Z. But the fact is, we've seen these emails where Felix was trying to get Trump to Moscow in 2015. I spoke about this yesterday, how that reeks of him trying to set Trump up and having the plausible deniability of saying, oh no, that was my legitimate idea. Even if somebody just said to Felix, hey Felix, why don't you bring Trump to Moscow? And maybe Felix just said, hey, that's a great idea. But this is the exact same reason why when Julie or Felix or some idiot says, oh, you should be talking about, what's his name, Rakashev. It's like, look, I'm not going to start investigating what you tell me to investigate. This is the number one way to, direct the story. It's interesting that Rakashev was sending $142,000 to Hunter Biden, but from what we can see, it seems like, maybe he knew Joe Biden was going to be president. When did that money get sent? Or Joe Biden was vice president? We got to go back and look at it. The point of the matter is he wanted to meet Joe Biden. So he sends him 142 grand, he arranges the meeting. That doesn't mean that Felix Sater didn't steal all this money. And also, he's like, oh, all these different stories that he has, none of them explain away the high probability that he got into some kind of crooked business with these guys. They all got pissed off at each other, and now they hate each other, right? It's like warring crime families. Again, you think about The Sopranos. You got Tony, and you got Paulie Walnuts, and you have Christopher, and Big Pussy, and there's all those different episodes where, Christopher goes sideways and they have to kill him, and Big Pussy becomes an FBI informant and they have to kill him. This is happening in these organized crime situations all the time. And why would that not happen with Felix Sater? By the way, if he's a made man in the Clinton crime family, and I mean, he's still got used to the Obama crime family, right? Even when they suspect Christopher and even when they suspect Big Pussy, they're still out there doing gigs with him, even setting things up to try to get him to do things so they can get him in position to take him down. How do we know that this whole lawsuit from Almaty, Kazakhstan is not exactly that? I'll tell you what, Felix did freak out on the stand and accuse the Boys Schiller attorneys of suing him into bankruptcy, which, if you wanted to put him out of business, that's what they do, right? They lawfare you to death. He might have been being honest about that. Yeah, I think he might have been. I think he might have been involved in a 90s era plan to crash the economy all around the world so that the average person becomes broke, and we have to, what? How do they solve those problems? They make the euro instead of the French franc or the whatever, or they make some international digital currency that they can turn off on you or something like that. So that's their plan. They want to destroy the worldwide economy, but all of us are going to secure our wealth by sinking dollars into real property while the dollars are still worth something. Like, in other words, if you own this building, or if it's 666 Fifth Avenue and you own it, let's say you own this hotel. I don't know what this is worth, 25 million, 100 million? Let's say this hotel right now is worth $100 million. And you're Jared Kushner and you say, hey, you are the president's son, we're going to destroy the economy and everybody in the world is going to be broke. So there's a couple different ways you can preserve your wealth, because after we sink the dollar and come back with a new currency, there's still going to be stuff. So if you have a functional car, that's a perfect example. Here's a Maserati hybrid, whatever this is, SUV. It's probably $300,000. I think a better example is my car, $35,000, SUV. At the time I got it, I said to myself, you know what? I think the dollar is going to go down, and over the 4 years I've been paying for the thing, I think that's been right. I still have the car. If you want to go buy that car right now, the last time I looked, it was $48,000. And yeah, mine has some miles on it, but it drives perfectly, and it's like a functional car. So if the dollar became worth zero tomorrow, a car would cost, that same car could be $200,000. I wouldn't be able to get one. But I still have the car. So if you knew that that was going to happen, maybe you would pay $45,000 or $70,000 if you had the money, because tomorrow the car is going to be $250,000, and the next day there are going to be no cars available for any price. So if you can take your $35,000 while it's worth $35,000 and sink it into real property, not that a car is real property, normally we're talking about buildings or something like that, but we're in an analogy here. That to me makes what Charles evaluates as an outrageously dumb purchase of a building by Jared Kushner make a little bit more sense. It's possible Kushner just did something really dumb, but we have a lot of other evidence that doesn't make a lot of sense. Look at this crazy looking machine sawing streets. I guess it shoots this juice at the street as it cuts. That doesn't look like Vermeer. I thought he was Dutch. Gucci, wow, this is a tough job for this guy if like 50 people decide to rob the store. Yeah, so I think Felix was in on a plan. He was a cog in the machine of a much larger plan to crash the worldwide economy. And I mean, maybe it didn't work exactly the way they wanted it to, right? Maybe it was like 9/11, which I think he knows more about than we've heard about, where, remember, in 1993, Ramzi Youssef tried to bomb the World Trade Center. He drove a van in there, loaded up with explosives. Now, who was really, really involved with the prosecution of Ramzi Youssef and all kinds of people? There was that guy, Gregory Scarpa Jr., I think it was, who was in the jail cell next to Ramzi Youssef, who allegedly got little notes passed to him. I never believed that story. I don't believe that the radical Islamic jihadist and the mafioso from Brooklyn become asshole buddies in jail. I just don't believe that. I think that sounds like a stupid story made up by the same idiots who can't tell the difference between a cheap porn star and the Playmate of the Year and figure, oh, Donald Trump loves hookers. No, that's a bullshit story made up by Valerie Caproni, Andrew Weissman, Norm Eisen, Ben Wittes, this lawfare brain trust of idiots. That's what that sounds like to me. So, oh yeah, the other thing that Julie was saying is, oh, hopefully, yeah, here's Felix hanging out with Bill Clinton. Julie was saying like, oh, well, hopefully now that the trial is over, Jason will stop talking about Felix Sater. Why does she care what I talk about? And she's like, oh, this is painful to watch. So why are you watching? Who is compelling you to watch? It's almost like you need to respond. You're basically carrying out the role of George's brother on behalf of Felix Sater. Why is that? Oh, and by the way, my father, my ex-wife, and me have been getting a litany of phone calls from Jackson Hewitt and all kind of tax preparation places like, oh, hi, Jason, I got your phone call and we're calling back about your taxes. And when it's my father or my ex-wife, they're saying, is Jason there? I've been divorced from Tatiana for 17 years, 16 years. Why are they bothering my ex-wife? It's nice to speak to her this morning. I haven't spoken to her in a few years, but who's doing that? Who is calling tax places? And I mean, what's the purpose of that? Is that Felix doing that? Is that Julie's friend Tom doing that? Is that George's brother doing that? Who has time to do that? But who else is focused on disrupting my family, coming up with every single stupid idea they possibly can to do anything at all, to irritate me and convince people not to watch this show, not to sponsor this show? Again, I don't care. Go interact with Julie, read her blog. I'm not telling anybody not to give her money. She wants me to have no support on the internet, no ability to earn money in the chosen career that I'm doing here, which is news reporting, opinion, commentary, journalism, documentary of the destruction of New York City, whatever you want to call it. She thinks, because she disagrees with my approach to examining this public lawsuit, that nobody should participate and that I should stop talking about it. It's bizarre that somebody cares that much what I would say about another person. Now, we saw her act like a maniac when I commented on the son who she introduced into the public discourse. I get it that somebody might be real defensive of their son, but why the hell do you care about Felix Sater? This just had a fake Cobra badge on it. It's not a Shelby. That's so stupid to put a fake little badge on you, like put the turbo sticker on the car. Now it really cooks. So again, this is a years-long investigation into the depth and breadth of the social engineering industry that protects these government criminals. It's insane. And I think what's happening is Felix Sater might be losing his magical powers. Remember, when he was disrupting, allegedly, I am alleging that he was involved, directly or indirectly, or his attorney, or some sort of little horse trade happened or something. But there seems to be something going on between Felix Sater and Jonathan Snyder and Valerie Caproni and Miami's case. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but all of them get very upset when I talk about it. That's my interest in Felix Sater. I don't care what Julie is talking about. She's a really annoying, idiotic woman who's bad at this job. If she's, trying to get me to not do the things that she's very overtly sort of, putting out there, it isn't working. I don't know why people keep paying these people. So that's what makes me say, or otherwise motivating. Right, so let's talk about that real estate aspect of it. So they sometimes are inflating the prices of things. We heard a story about how Viktor Krapanov, he was the mayor of Almaty, Kazakhstan. And again, you got to remember what was going on. The 90s, the mid-90s in the former Soviet Union, I have been told, was like the wild, wild west. Matt Taibbi was out there with his crazy magazine doing all kinds of stuff. My unfortunately now deceased friend, this guy died just a couple months ago of pancreas cancer. He was a friend of friends of mine from college, so I've known him since college, but he didn't go to NYU with me. I remember after college, he went to Russia and he opened a poker club. This guy was always on the edge. I mean, he was selling like pounds of marijuana when we were in college. Him and his girlfriend got tied up and held a shotgun point in his apartment one time. So this guy was like sort of always crime adjacent. And he said that people like Bill Browder came into his poker club. It was a bar and an entertainment venue kind of thing. And here's a Maybach. Is that the NYPD intelligence unit? But anyway, it was kind of anything goes. There wasn't a lot of, it wasn't a strong government in control, and you didn't have a population that was very familiar with capitalist kind of society. I've told this story about how when I went with my ex-wife, who I spoke to earlier today because they've begun harassing her. When I went with her to Ukraine in 2003, we went to the apartment that she grew up in, and her brother at that time still lived in it with his young family. And the apartment was modest, of course, but nicely appointed, nicely kept. And the exterior of the building, I mean, it looked like way worse than any of these blown out buildings, you know, like wood. This looks not bad at all compared to it, but wood, graffiti, broken lights, you know, windows covered with wood, way worse than this. And this looks bad. But you, like, you know, it was like, wow, you wouldn't go in there. And I said to her, why does it look so bad? And she said, because the communists don't take care of the building anymore. It was like 10 years after Perestroika that we were there. I remember sitting in cafes while she was yapping away with her friends in Russian, and I would just be reading the British newspaper. And it was all about 10 years after Perestroika. Everybody's worse off financially. And that's what the United States wanted, to keep the former Soviet republics under our thumb, control the world financially. I mean, I'm not making this up. I'm not even really synthesizing this. This is what the United States and this Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George Bush, insane neocon crew, this is what they wanted. They wanted all those people to be poor and broke and us to control the world through a hegemonic dollar that they've now broken because they're greedy, stupid idiots like Felix Sater. So there are victims to his crimes. And by the way, Julie, why did you choose this guy to defend him? He's a horrible asshole. He's assaulted me. He stabbed a dude in the face. He's stolen millions and millions of dollars by his own admission. He's been convicted of fraud. He's just a pathological liar. So it's weird to me. You know, I get it that people were defending Julian Assange. I have questions about him, but he hasn't been convicted of crimes. His raison d'etre was not to steal all the money he could get his hands on. He was ostensibly trying to help people. It's a whole other conversation if he's not some sort of set up limited hangout or been converted into that now through this plea deal or whatever. I don't want to get into that right now. I'm just saying nothing about what Julie says makes any sense. Nothing about why she's so interested in publishing so much information about Felix Sater makes any sense. Nothing about her reasons for, no, I mean, she doesn't need reasons to dislike me. It's just her personal preference. She doesn't like me. She doesn't agree with my interpretation of the information surrounding Felix Sater. But this campaign to get people to not listen to me and focus only on what the approved Felix Sater information is, things that she's put out and other Twitter accounts that she's going to tell you about. That's the only Felix Sater information you should listen to. By the way, anybody listening right now, maybe you're listening because you think I'm a ranting, raving idiot and this is all nonsense. That's fine. You're free to think that. I'm not telling people you have to believe this and this is what happened. I'm trying to, you know, that's another reason that I use the disclaimers, the caveats. I'm telling people, these are my opinions from looking at these facts. Think about it and tell me what you think. Maybe you have a better idea. Maybe you know something I don't know. I don't know. So then the other thing that came up is that she says, oh, Felix is going to appeal. And I said, look, it's obvious she's in communication with him. And so then the next day she came up with like, oh, Jason's an idiot because Bloomberg reported it. But there's other evidence that informs the things that I say about Julie, not just the Bloomberg thing. Again, everything they do is plausible deniability. She acts like what I'm saying is ridiculous. The notion that she would be in direct communication with Felix Sater is ridiculous. Well, they're back and forth on Twitter. You're telling me that little DM envelope is off limits? He never just sends a message to her that says, hey, talk about, what's his name, Rakashev? Go, you know, make fun of Jason, give his phone number to the tax people and have them call him. They've done stuff like that to me before. Put my phone number on Craigslist. Jason Burmis did that lying scumbag. He first put out a video telling people that I made money off of QAnon. Anybody who's ever watched the show knows the second that showed up, I said it was bullshit. And by the way, that's relevant here. Look at who Julie is retweeting. Michael Flynn, Tracy Beans, all the same people who I've been saying are social engineers for a long time. Maybe not Michael Flynn, but Tracy Beans, I've been saying based on evidence that I've seen and phone calls that I've had with her and interactions I've had with her and her interactions with George Webb. All of these people are in a network that appears to be coordinated to protect various criminal elements here, whether it's Barack Obama or the Clintons. You know, they're putting out fake stories. And look, in 2016, the number of people getting news from podcasts and YouTube and that kind of stuff, it really doesn't even compare to what's happening now, but it was just starting. And certainly the people I'm talking about could have anticipated that this was going to happen. And they were spooling up all of these idiots to do all this stuff. George, his asshole brother, Tracy Beans, and they all appear to be coordinated by Michael Flynn, who himself was just a limited hangout with his oh so scary, hey, this is new, isn't it? Sleeping Cat? Oh no, I think I've seen it once before. But this was the French restaurant. Yeah, no, I did walk by here once before. Oh, yeah. Milk rolls, looks good. Lemon bar looks melting. They're open. So that's pretty much the wrap up on the Felix Sater trial. But I'm certainly not done talking about Felix Sater. I mean, the other thing is, what is her premise? That I'm like, I'm going to this Felix Sater trial because, like, for clicks or what? Do people give a shit about Felix Sater? I would think most people just don't even have any idea who he is. You know, it's not like I'm like glomming on to some hot thing to take something away from her. Nothing at all about what she is doing since this all started makes any sense unless she is Felix Sater's PR, social engineering, blogging mouthpiece, whose sole purpose is to get people to not listen to what Jason is saying, don't pay attention to his interpretation of facts and evidence, only pay attention to this certified by Julie information. What? She's absurd. So thanks for watching, everybody. Please become a sponsor. Odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. It's the best way to do it. You've got a great search engine on there, even for free. If you just subscribe without becoming a member, you're going to have access to the largest repository of Crowdsource the Truth videos on the internet. Now, okay, they're actually constructing that building. But you can also sponsor the show for as little as $3 a month on Odyssey. Going to get access to sponsor-exclusive content. We've got John Cullen Investigates tomorrow. That will be great. You can also check out crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Oh yeah, so she said that Felix is going to appeal, but there is no appeal, notice of appeal filed on the docket. And by the way, that's a very, very easy thing to do. You just literally say, and this is not legal advice, you just say notice of appeal, and you file that, and then the court sends it to the appellate court, and then that starts your appeal. So, like, if he was ready to do it, and this was like a super screwed up ruling, why not just do it? Here's the reason why not just do it. Because the reason stupid John Snyder gave in his affidavit contained in the motion to withdraw was that Felix declared bankruptcy. That's pretty loud. Felix declared bankruptcy, I believe, as a result of his divorce, or no, he said Boyd Schiller was suing him into bankruptcy. I don't know, but he declared bankruptcy 3 months ago. These guys wanted to withdraw. They had a motion to, you know, what do they call it? Motion to, you know, delay the trial. I forget the lawyer word for rescheduling something, but adjourn. He wanted to adjourn his hearing and his trial, and they said no. And they said there's no need for the Rule 50 judgment as a matter of law because the jury, you're right, no sane jury would listen to Felix Sater. That's basically what that Rule 50 says, is that we don't even need to go to the jury because just as a matter of law, this guy loses. Oh yeah, the other important thing that the judge said yesterday, actually Mr. Zach from Boies Schiller said this. He said, I know this case feels like a criminal trial. We've been going through money laundering and this and that and the other, but of course it's a civil trial of the bank suing him. It's actually a very interesting point. Yeah, this is a lawfare case against Felix Sater, but not everybody who gets hit by lawfare is a nice person. Sometimes, I suppose, it could be the only way to get justice, or perhaps this isn't justice. Perhaps it's just warring crime families getting back at each other with lawfare. Perhaps it's more civilized than shooting each other. I don't know. But there's absolutely a lot going on here. There's absolutely a ton about this that I don't know. Lots of reasons to be curious about the relationship between Boies Schiller, Flexner, and the bank. Oh yeah, the other thing is they're saying that this guy who sent the money, Rakashev, to Felix Sater, to Hunter Biden. Okay, so Innis Yakashev, whatever the hell his name was. What was his name? Yeah, Rakashev, who sent the $142,000 to Hunter for the Porsche. They're saying that, oh, he has a relationship with Boies Schiller. Guess what? Hunter Biden was a lawyer at Boies Schiller. So why aren't you saying anything about that? And why was George so interested in talking about Joe Biden's BlackBerry and me depixelating Joe Biden's BlackBerry? That really doesn't seem to have anything to do with this. Tony Bobolinsky was interacting on an iPhone with WhatsApp. It seems like all of this is planted seeds that they wanted me to water that I didn't. Thanks for watching, everybody.